Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 37, verses 47 through 52. Param saukhyaṁ hi nairāśyam svairiṇī Piṅgalā jānatīnāṁ kṛṣṇe tathāpy duratyayā. Param, the highest. Saukhyaṁ, happiness. He, indeed. Nairāśyam, indifference. Svairiṇī, unchaste. Api, although. Aha, stated. Piṅgalā, the prostitute Piṅgalā. Tat, of that. Jānatīnāṁ, who are aware. Naha, for us. Kṛṣṇe, focused on Kṛṣṇa. Tathāpy, nevertheless. Asha, the hope. Duratyayā, is impossible to transcend. Translation. Indeed, the greatest happiness is to renounce all desires, as even the prostitute Piṅgalā has declared. Yet even though we know this, we cannot give up our hopes of attaining Kṛṣṇa. Purport. The story of Piṅgalā is narrated in the 11th Canto, 8th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Text 48. Kau utsaheta santyaktum uttama-shloka samvidam anichatopyasya shir anganachyavate kvachit. Kaha, who, utsaita, can bear, santyaktum, to give up, uttama-shloka, with Lord Kṛṣṇa, samvidam, intimate talks, anichataha, not wanted, api, even though, yasya, whose, Shri, the supreme goddess of fortune, angat, the body, nachyavate, does not let go of, kvachit, ever. Translation. Who can bear to give up intimate talks with Lord Uttama-shloka? Although he shows no interest in her, Goddess Shri never moves from her place on his chest. Text 49. Sarichailavano desha gavo venu rava ime sankarshana sahayena Kṛṣṇena charita prabhu. Sarit, rivers. Shaila, hills. Vana udeshaha, and areas of the forest. Gavaha, cows. Venu ravaha, flute sounds. Ime, all these. Sankarshana, Lord Balaram. Sahayena, whose companion. Kṛṣṇena, by Kṛṣṇa. Acharitaha, utilized. Prabhu, O Master. Uddhava. Translation. Dear Uddhava Prabhu, When Kṛṣṇa was here in the company of Shankarshan, he enjoyed all these rivers, hills, forests, cows, and flute sounds. Text 50. Punak punak smarayanti Nandagopa sutambata Shiniket tas padakair Vismartum naiva shaknunama. Puna puna, again and again. Smarayanti, they remind. Nandagopa Sutam, of the son of Nanda, the cowherd king. Bhatha, certainly. Shri, divine. Niketai, having markings. Tat, his. Padakai, because of the footprints. Vishmartum, to forget. Na, not. Eva, indeed. Shaknumaha, are we able? Translation. All these remind us constantly of Nanda's son. Indeed, because we see Krishna's footprints, which are marked with divine symbols, we can never forget him. Text 51. Gatya lalitya dodara Hasalila valokanai Madhya gira hritadiya Katam tam vishmaram mahe. Gatya, by his gait. Lalitaya, charming. Udhara, with generous. Hasa, smiles. Leela, playful. Avalokanaye, by his glances. Madhya, honey-like. Gira, by his words. Rita, stolen away. Diha, whose hearts. Katam, how. Tam, him. Vishmarama, we can forget. Hey, O Uddhava. Translation. O Uddhava, how can we forget him when our hearts have been stolen away by the charming way he walks, his generous smile and playful glances, and his honey-like words? Now we're going to text 52, which is the last of the slokas spoken by the gopis in this wave of this chapter. He nata he ramanatha Rajanath artinashana Magdam udhara govinda Gokulam vijinartnavat. He nata he ramanatha Rajanath artinashana Magdam udhara govinda Gokulam vijinartnavat. He nata he ramanatha Rajanath artinashana Magdam udhara govinda Gokulam vijinartnavat. Hey Nata, O Master, Hey Ramanatha, O Master of the Goddess of Fortune, Vrajanatha, O Master of the Cowherd Village, Arti, of Suffering, Nashana, O Destroyer, Magnam, Submerged, Udara, Uplift, Govinda, O Govinda, Gokulam, Gokul, Vrijina, of distress, Arnavat, from the ocean. Translation. O Master of the Goddess of Fortune, O Master of Braja, O Destroyer of all suffering, Govinda, please lift your Gokul out of the ocean of distress in which it is drowning. We can repeat. O Master of the Goddess of Fortune, O Master of Braja, O Destroyer of all suffering, Govinda, please lift your Gokul out of the ocean of distress in which it is drowning. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti presents the following insight into this scene. Someone might propose to the gopis, why don't you just go somewhere else? Leave Vrindavan, and then you won't have to see these rivers, mountains, and forests. Cover your eyes with your garments. Use your intelligence to lead your minds to some other thought, and thus forget Kṛṣṇa. The gopis answered this suggestion in the previous verse by stating, we no longer possess our intelligence, for Kṛṣṇa has taken it away by his supreme beauty and charm. Now in the present verse, the feelings of the gopis become so strong that they disregard Uddhava, and turning toward Mathura, address Kṛṣṇa himself with humble cries. They address Kṛṣṇa as Rajanath, because in the past, young Kṛṣṇa performed many inconceivable pastimes to protect his beloved village people, such as lifting Govardhan Hill and destroying many monstrous demons. In this heart-rending verse, the gopis cry out to Kṛṣṇa to remember the wonderful, sweet relationship they once enjoyed together as innocent village people. Indeed, Sri Kṛṣṇa would lovingly take care of his father's cows, and the gopis appealed to him to remember these duties and return so he could resume them. Om Ajnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakhaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantekam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Harigor Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now we know from Srila Rupa Goswami that the entire ocean of devotion, it's unlimited, and we're just putting a little toe into it, trying to taste that nectar of devotion. But this particular chapter, this chapter in itself is like an ocean. This ocean, this chapter which Prabhupada calls the delivering of the message of Kṛṣṇa to the gopis, it has in it 6 waves. Now, waveology, if you study the waves, it's amazing because these 6 waves in this particular chapter, they're made of sound waves. And sound waves, they transmit energy. Just as later, because there's many parallels between what's being said here, just as the gopis start with Piṅgalā, and the last conversation that Kṛṣṇa and Uddhava had before Kṛṣṇa left this world. So Kṛṣṇa explains to Uddhava there that this human body, which comes automatically after evolution, it's like a very well-constructed boat, and the captain of this boat is the guru, and the winds that move the boat towards the shore are the instructions of the Supreme Lord. So these winds, actually it's the winds or the instructions of Kṛṣṇa that create waves. There are other products, there are other reasons why waves are formed. For instance, the surface waves, that's created by the winds. And if the wind is very strong, then the waves are very high. And underneath in the water, there are things like volcanoes that create very high waves. There are earthquakes that create tsunamis. And there are also riptides, currents. They're the tides created by the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon. And all of these movements of the ocean are actually the life force of the ocean, just as we have our heart beating and our breathing. So the movements of the waves and the tides, that's the life force of this ocean. So the 6 waves in this chapter, a wave has a crest and then a trough. So the troughs in the waves are when Sukadeva Goswami introduces each wave. The first wave is when Sukadeva Goswami, he describes that now Uddhava has come, he's taken his bath. He has a very important message to give to the gopis, because in the previous chapter, Kṛṣṇa, he spent 4 slokas, 3 to 6. One line was dedicated to his parents. You have to give this message to my parents. And the other 3.75 part of the slokas was dedicated to this very important message that Uddhava had to give to the gopis. So he had this message, and he was trying to understand how to get this message to the gopis. The gopis themselves came to him, and after Sukadeva Goswami explains how Uddhava met the gopis then give their first 5 waves of lamentation. Ultimately, calling Kṛṣṇa a lecher. Because what they say is that we know that you have come to placate Kṛṣṇa's mother and father. Because even for great sages, it's very difficult to give up family relations. So he cares about his parents. But as for other relations, those are self-motivated. And they give so many examples of the students and their teachers, and of the priests and their donors, and of the prostitute and their customers. And then finally, in the end, they say, and there's the man, just like the bee, he enjoys the flower and then flies off. There's the man who enjoys his lover, and even if the lover is very attached to him, after he's finished enjoying her, he disappears. So that was the first wave. And then Sukadev, he introduces the next wave. Because when the gopis stopped speaking, Radharani was amongst them, she becomes agitated by anger, hearing what the gopis have to say, and she speaks the next wave, 10 verses. And we studied that in great detail, the Song of the Bee, how she goes through different types of jalpa, pratijalpa, deriding Kṛṣṇa, and finally coming to the conclusion of peacefulness. How is Kṛṣṇa? We would love to see him, but would only increase our anger more. So that's the second wave. And then Sukadev, he introduces Uddhava. He's watching this. He hasn't said anything yet. He sees the first wave, and then he sees the second wave, and his conclusion is that I saw a scorpion, I tried to run away from the scorpion, and instead I ran into the mouth of a snake. Because the lamentation of the gopis, that was like the scorpion, and then running into the snake's mouth was like hearing Radharani in her lamentation. So after Radharani finishes, she falls unconscious. She can't even finish her words. She's just stuttering and gargling. And she's unconscious. And she's there in the middle of the assembly. All the gopis are surrounding her. And Uddhava, seeing the situation of Radharani and this intense love that they're expressing to him, he's the only one there as the audience, he takes off his garments, because his garments are from Kṛṣṇa, and he puts them just next to Radharani so she can smell the fragrance of Kṛṣṇa's garments. And from that fragrance, she regains her consciousness. And he begins speaking to her that, Kṛṣṇa, you'll be with Kṛṣṇa soon, do not worry, do not lament like this. And then Uddhava, seeing this amazing display of love that he had never experienced before, he begins to praise the gopis, that whatever form of religious activities, sacrifice, yoga, this, that, the other thing, they're all like rivers running into the ocean. And you gopis are that ocean of love. You have attained the perfection that all the sages have been aspiring for. Because you have spontaneous, you can never forget Kṛṣṇa, even for a moment. Now these gopis, when we see the beautiful gopis here in Vrindavan, their smiling faces, their beautiful clothing and ornaments, their nicely combed hair and decorated with flowers, everything very beautiful and attractive. But the gopis in this condition, when Uddhava saw them, their hair was undone, their eyes were burning, searching for Kṛṣṇa. Because the fire was inside, their hot breathing had caused their lips to all crack, and their whole complexion, it was like coal covered by ash and smoke. Their clothes were soiled, dirty clothes. They hadn't bothered to change their clothes. So this was the condition that Uddhava saw the gopis in. After praising them, this is the third wave. This is the biggest wave. Because sometimes the waves join together to make very big waves. So this third biggest wave is Uddhava praising the gopis, and without stopping, he explains to the gopis that I have brought a message for you from Kṛṣṇa. Now, when Kṛṣṇa wrote this message, his hand was shaking. He was also very distressed. And he didn't want Uddhava to show the message to the gopis, because of the gopis' condition and because of his condition. He said, I want you to read this message to the gopis. This message, Uddhava forewarned them, the gopis. He said, an intelligent person, when a messenger comes, they will hear the message, and then after hearing the message, they will either lament or feel joy. A foolish person, without hearing the message, they will lament and enjoy on account of their imagination. So I want you to hear this message very carefully. So what Uddhava did was, he repeated the 9 slokas of Kṛṣṇa's message 3 times. And each sloka, each time he repeated it, the gopis were able to understand better and better what Kṛṣṇa was saying to them. Now, just as in the Bhagavad Gita, we have the 18 chapters, and right in the middle of the 18 chapters, we have the key verse. Man mana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. It's right in the center, at the end of the 8th chapter, beginning of the 9th chapter, right there. Most important sloka in all of the Bhagavad Gita. So in this chapter we have 69 verses. And the middle sloka is right when Kṛṣṇa is speaking his 9 verses to the gopis. And the 34th sloka, he says to the gopis that actually I disappeared from you just to increase your feelings of separation from me. That's 34th. 35th. The reason I wanted to increase your feelings of separation from me is because when a woman is separated from her lover, she thinks of him more than when she's with her lover. So this is the crux. This is it's called, in waveology, it's called the crest of that wave. This is the very essence of why this whole pastime is taking place. Kṛṣṇa explains to the gopis in this way. Then, coming down, Sukadeva says, now the gopis will reply. Because having heard the message, they've now understood it properly, and they're somewhat pacified. The gopis then begin to speak. This is the fourth wave, and this is the wave that we're in now. This fourth wave has 14 slokas. We've gone through now 8 slokas. And today we are going through the last 6 slokas. That's why it took so long. Now these 6 slokas, they end with a heart-rending calling out, crying to Kṛṣṇa, completely forgetting even that Uddhava is watching them. The gopis, they face Mathura, and they cry as loud as they can to Kṛṣṇa, hoping that they will hear him, to remind him, Hey Nata. Why Nata? Well, in some renditions of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it's Hey Kṛṣṇa. In the rendition that we have, it's Hey Nata. Now this Nata, what are the gopis remembering? They use the word here, magnam, drowning. They're not talking about themselves because they've been somewhat pacified now by Krishna's personal, private message to them. They're talking about all of the residents of Braja. They had been drowned once before. That was in chapter 25. In chapter 25, Indra, due to his arrogance, impudence, false ego, he had sent the Samvartaka and the winds of destruction to drown all of the residents and kill them, including killing the cows. And there was so much water that the cows, they were trying to protect the calves with their bodies. It wasn't possible. And the people, they couldn't tell where the high and the low land was. And they were all running to Kṛṣṇa, asking, Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Mahabhaga, please, please protect us, deliver us. And Kṛṣṇa, seeing this situation that he had caused, he caused the suffering, he told them not to worship Indra. He spoke a very important sloka at that time. Actually, he made a vow. He said, Tasmat mat sharanam gostam. That these cowherd community, all the people here, they have taken complete shelter of me. Then he says that mannata mat parigraham, that I am their Lord, and they accept me as their Lord, and they also accept me as their family members. Then he says, because they accept me as their Lord and their family members most intimately, he says that it is therefore my duty that gopate satma yogina, that I must protect them with my own mystic powers. And then in the last line, he says to them, he says to himself, he's speaking to himself, saukhyaṁ me vrata ahita. Therefore, I take this vow that I will always protect the gostam. That's the cowherd community. And therefore, he protected them from drowning. Right after that sloka, he lifted up Govardhan Hill. Everyone came over Govardhan Hill, and they were all protected from drowning. Now again, the gopis, they've come above a little bit because they have their message. Now they're calling out to Kṛṣṇa again, "Hey Nata, don't you remember? You promised that you would protect all of the residents of Vrindavan. They're drowning again. Now they're drowning in the ocean of separation. You please come back. Save them. Protect them." And at that point, just after this sloka number 52, the gopis fall unconscious. And Uddhava sees them on the ground. Now, despite their ragged condition, unclean, unkempt, he notices something different, that their limbs have become jubilant. It's just for a moment. But what Kṛṣṇa did was, during that moment when they fell unconscious, because time doesn't exist in the spiritual world, because everyone is eternally engaged in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, he expanded that moment into a night of Brahma, and the gopis internally, because after hearing the message from Kṛṣṇa, that externally, internally, I'm always with you. Internally, they enjoyed the Rasa Lila with Kṛṣṇa within that moment for the whole night of Brahma. And Uddhava watched them. And he was saying to them, "Gopis, gopis, please, don't lament like this. Wake up." So then, that's the fourth wave. The fifth wave, it's shared, so it becomes high. It's shared with Sukadeva Goswami, because Sukadeva is describing to Parikshit Maharaj what's going on. He describes how Uddhava was so, he had never seen such love as this. And then Uddhava begins his prayers. So in the beginning, Uddhava, he offers 6 prayers. Now in this fifth wave, he offers another 6 prayers. And these are the 6 prayers in his humility, because Uddhava was considered to be like a preceptor guru for the Brijbasis. He was a minister in Dwarka. He was one of the most highly educated, being the disciple of Brihaspati. He was the personal friend and relative of Kṛṣṇa, and he had been personally sent to deliver the message. That's what a guru does. He delivers the message of the Supreme Lord. So he felt that although he worshipped the gopis as the topmost devotees in the entire creation, because of his position as a guru, he felt if he asked them for their foot dust, they wouldn't agree. So what he does is he prays in this fifth wave that they'll never give me their foot dust in this lifetime. So next lifetime, because the gopis are always wandering all over Vrindavan, let me take birth as a creeper, as a bush, as an herb, because as the gopis are wandering, they might step on my head and then I'll get the dust of their feet. Because Uddhava could understand that with the foot dust, he could then make spiritual advancement as well. Now this is the fifth wave. There's a very small last wave in this chapter. Again, it's introduced by Sukadeva. That's the trough. When the wave is over, then the Sukadeva speaks. He says that Uddhava now, the gopis, because Uddhava, he was behaving not in the mood, he was acting as a doctor. Now we know when we go to the hospital, the doctors make their rounds in the morning. They check how the patient is. According to the different symptoms, they might change the prescription, they'll give the medicine. So every morning, Uddhava would go and visit the residents of Vrindavan, just like a doctor. And he would administer the medicine. And the medicine was, as he would go to each place, he would have the residents tell them the pastime, and then he would also add pastimes of the Lord. This was the medicine to relieve the residents of Vrindavan of this disease, this burning fire, this fever of separation. Now in some places it's said that he stayed for a few months. A few means 2 or 3 or 4. Several means 5 or 6. But according to some of the acharyas, he actually stayed 11 months. Because neither he wanted to leave, nor did the Brijbasis want him to leave. He was administering that medicine. Finally, they were feeling some relief from this fever of separation. But because Krishna's pastimes were going on in Mathura, he felt obligated. He wanted to take part in Krishna's pastimes. So one day, he took permission from the elderly gopis, the gopas and the gopis. He took permission from the gopis. He mounted his chariot. Everyone came and gave Uddhava so many gifts. What were their gifts? In the very beginning, when the gopis first gave their prayers, they were comparing the wealth of Mathura to the wealth of Vrindavan. In Mathura, there are jewels, there are palaces, there are kings and princesses, and so many opulent things in Mathura. Here in Vrindavan, our greatest wealth is the rope that we tie around the cow's legs. So what did they bring? What did they send to Kṛṣṇa and Balaram? They sent milk, cheese, butter, ghee, whatever ornaments they had, they put in Uddhava's hands. And Uddhava went on his way. And at the end, he meets, so the wave, this last wave, when Nanda Maharaj and the Gopas, they see Uddhava, although he's a young boy, same age as Kṛṣṇa, they also see Uddhava as if a guru. And they pray to him for benedictions. They pray that with our mind, our body, and our words, that we can always be engaged in Krishna's service. And then they pray that even in our next lifetime, whatever our karmic reactions are, we have to take birth again, that even in our next lifetime, we can continue in our devotional service. And then Uddhava returns. Now, before he returns, the gopis secretly give Uddhava a sealed envelope. They have a message for Kṛṣṇa as well. So Uddhava, he returns to Mathura. He speaks to Kṛṣṇa Balaram, Vasudeva, Ugrasen, describing the condition of the Brijbasis, how he delivered the messages. He secretly gives the message of the gopis to Kṛṣṇa. What is that message? In an ocean, all right, we heard about different types of waves. There's another type of a wave. It's called a rip current or a rip tide. That is, has anyone ever got caught in a rip tide? Yeah, I have. And in a rip, what happens is you think you're a good swimmer, you go out in the ocean, and then all of a sudden the rip tide, what it does is it crosses the other waves coming in. And it crosses so that you can't get back into the shore. And as much as you swim, you can't get across this rip tide. So most people die, but if you know about rip tides, you know that what you have to do is you have to be peaceful and you have to go far away from the rip tide and then come in where the water is peaceful and then you can reach the shore. So this rip tide in Krishna's pastimes here, it began when he was a young boy, when he first started associating with the gopis. At first, the gopis and Kṛṣṇa, they were very discreet about when they met, about what they were doing, and no one could quite understand. Kṛṣṇa would sneak out of his window and then come back before Mother Yasoda came. But as the years went by, people began to realize that something's going on here between the gopis and Kṛṣṇa. And Kṛṣṇa, he started to feel embarrassed. Maybe we've also had that experience in our relationships. Sometimes someone's a little too overt, and you start feel ashamed when other people see this. So Kṛṣṇa started feeling ashamed and embarrassed in front of his elders because they were starting to understand that there was some relationship, and these were all married girls on top of it. So as an excuse to kill Kamsa, he left Braja. He said, let things cool down for a while. Let things become in such a way that our relationship will be accepted. It's just like a riptide. You just have to wait for some time, go to another place, and then when it's peaceful, you can come back onto the shore. So Kṛṣṇa left. He was in Mathura. He was suffering just as much as the Brijbasis were suffering separation. He was alone. He only had Balaram, and then later Rohini came. Maybe he was suffering more because at least the Brijbasis, they had the trees, they had the mountains, they had the rivers, they had all these wonderful places in Vrindavan to remind them of Kṛṣṇa. And Kṛṣṇa, he was caught. Vasudeva and Devaki wouldn't allow him to go to Vrindavan. They wouldn't even allow the Brijbasis to come to Mathura for his thread ceremony. They wouldn't allow Nanda and Yashoda to come see the thread ceremony because they knew it would break their heart because he was becoming Kshatriya then. So Kṛṣṇa made a different arrangement. So this riptide was keeping the gopis from coming to him, was keeping him from going there, and everyone had to just wait. They waited for 125 years. Now, these particular slokas we're discussing in 47, they start, they quote Piṅgalā. Piṅgalā, this is also the 11th canto. When Brahma and the demigods came and requested Kṛṣṇa that you've now spent 125 years in the dynasty of the Yadus, you performed all of the tasks that we asked you to do while you were here on earth, killed all the demons, established religions. Now we request you go back to your eternal abode, Vaikuntha. And Kṛṣṇa agreed, said, yes, I've done everything you've asked me to do. On the way to Vaikuntha, I'll stop in Brahmaloka, I will see all the demigods there, and then I'll proceed. Now, Uddhava was such a close associate of Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa sent Uddhava to Vrindavan, particularly so that he could understand the love of the gopis, the conjugal mood of the gopis. As soon as Uddhava came back to Mathura, we'll read in the next chapter, Kṛṣṇa then took Uddhava to the house of Kubja. Kubja welcomed, she was a society girl, she welcomed both of the young men, she offered them both a seat, but Uddhava, he didn't come there to enjoy, he sat on the floor. And Uddhava observed all of Kṛṣṇa's activities with Kubja. Then when Kṛṣṇa went to Dwarka, 16,108 wives, Uddhava was there constantly. He saw all of the activities of Kṛṣṇa in his conjugal affairs with the queens. So Uddhava, who could be a closer friend than Uddhava? He knew everything about Kṛṣṇa, inside, outside, even the things you don't want your friends to know, he knew. So Uddhava could understand the inauspicious omens were happening in Dwarka, the demigods had come, Uddhava knew, and the curse of the Yadus. It was going to happen. So Uddhava knew that Kṛṣṇa was preparing to leave. So in a solitary place, he went to Kṛṣṇa, he says, I understand you're leaving, I understand your pastimes are finished now. Please, you take me with you. I won't be able to live without you here on earth. And Kṛṣṇa, he doesn't allow Uddhava to come with him this time. He says, no, I want you to stay here. I want you to accept the renounced order. And I want you to get more knowledge. Because one can be one's own self-instructing guru. And he gave the example from his forefather, Maharaj Yadu. Yadu, who was a great king, the son of Yayati, he was wandering and he came across an avadut. This avadut was behaving just like a child in madness. So Maharaj Yadu, he asked the avadut that, I can see that you're a self-realized saint, but why are you behaving like this? And where did you get your knowledge? So the avadut explained to him that I have 24 gurus, and I have learned a lesson from each of my gurus. earth, water, fire, air, ether, sun, moon, the python, the elephant, the kurara bird, the pigeon, the moth, the honeybee, the honey thief, 24. The last one that this avadut explained to Maharaj Yadu was the prostitute, Piṅgalā. Now Piṅgalā, as a prostitute, very beautiful, her interest was money. She had to maintain herself. And she used her beauty to attract lovers, to extract money from them, so she could live comfortably. So her occupation was based on sense gratification. And the description in the 11th Canto is, one night she dressed herself very attractively, and from her house she had a doorway. She stood at the doorway and she displayed her wares. That means she showed her beautiful form there at the doorway so that the men would be attracted to her. But that night, no one stopped. They all passed her by up until midnight. And then at midnight, she had a realization that I have wasted my life just for the purpose of sense gratification. Because of my lusty desires, my desire for money, I have wasted my entire life for temporary lovers. Now I will give up this profession, and I will take shelter of my eternal lover, Kṛṣṇa. So the motto of Piṅgalā is, from disappointment comes the highest pleasure. Because by her disappointment of not getting a temporary lover, she was able to take shelter of her eternal lover and immerse herself in love for Kṛṣṇa. So the gopis, because by public opinion, they were considered to be unchaste, wandering in the forest looking for their lover Kṛṣṇa. Now this is what the public felt of the gopis. We know that they're the topmost devotees. But they were taking the example of Piṅgalā because Piṅgalā, she came to the right conclusion to love Kṛṣṇa. Although the gopis had no other love but Kṛṣṇa. But still, from the disappointment comes the greatest pleasure. So therefore, the gopis use Piṅgalā as an example of their disappointment of separation from Kṛṣṇa. They will take as the highest pleasure because now they can always think of Kṛṣṇa. Then they explain in the coming verses from 48 until 51 how it's impossible for us to forget Kṛṣṇa because everywhere we look, we're reminded of his pastimes. We're reminded of his sweet words. We're reminded of the intimate promises that he made to us. And even if we try to forget him, because Uddhava, he suggests that why don't you just cover your eyes and then you won't see all these places. He said, it doesn't matter. Cover your eyes, you won't see the places, control your mind with your intelligence, think of something other than Kṛṣṇa. And the gopis say, well, that's impossible. Our intelligence was stolen by Kṛṣṇa. He took our intelligence with him. Now all we have is these memories. And we can't stop thinking of Kṛṣṇa even for a minute. Even Radharani asked Uddhava that you give me some medicine by which I can forget Kṛṣṇa. So then in that total sense of loss of intelligence, not being able to think of anything but Kṛṣṇa, they chant this last sloka beginning with Hey Nata. Now, hey, this is being said in pain. That, yes, we are somewhat relieved now, but look at the painful suffering of all of these inhabitants of Braja. So these slokas, they go on. Now we'll go on to the fifth wave, where Uddhava praises the gopis. Then we'll go on to the sixth wave, where Nanda Maharaj prays for eternal devotion. And this chapter is so beautiful in the expressions of love. Who are the speakers? Sukadeva Goswami, the gopis, Radharani, Kṛṣṇa himself, and Uddhava, all the topmost devotees and the Supreme Lord himself. Sukadeva Goswami himself, he speaks 25% of the slokas, introducing each of the waves. The gopis, they speak the most, 27%. And then Uddhava, 17%, Radharani 15%, Kṛṣṇa 13%, and Nanda Maharaj 3%. We are getting so much nectar in this one chapter, and we should take these instructions to our heart and absorb the humility that Uddhava has. Uddhava doesn't aspire to be a gopi. Prabhupada calls it impersonalism if we try to become gopis. Uddhava aspires to be an herb so the gopis can trample on him. So this is the humility of the topmost devotee, closest associate of Sri Kṛṣṇa himself throughout all of his pastimes. This should be our aspiration, and then we can enter into this mood of understanding the love of the gopis. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Yes, Prabhu.
Kṛṣṇa killed many demons, killed Putana, and she got the benefit of being in Vaikuntha like a mother. So why don't Kṛṣṇa just kill everybody and everybody can get liberated? I mean, you know, Kṛṣṇa killed her, and she didn't like Kṛṣṇa, she wanted to kill him. And we're all having a hard time with surrender and whatnot, so why don't Kṛṣṇa just kill everybody and bring everyone back home?
Well, Vasudeva Datta also offered that solution to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that I'll take all their sinful reactions, and you just liberate everyone and take them back to Godhead. And Kṛṣṇa, Lord Chaitanya just laughed. He said, well, if I take this batch back, then a whole other batch will come.
At least this batch got back. At least this batch got back.
It's an appreciation of your compassionate mood, that you want everyone to go back to Godhead. Doesn't work that way. We're all going back to Godhead, eventually. When Mukunda Datta heard that it would take him 10 million lifetimes, he started to dance. And then immediately he got liberated. So it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of, are we qualified to go back to Godhead? Otherwise we'll create disturbance there. And that's why we're here in the first place. Yes, Prabhu. Wait.
Everyone will go back to God except for Mr. Nair.
Excuse me?
Everyone will go back to God except for Mr. Nair.
Yes, everyone can go back to Godhead except for Mr. Nair.
Just remember, what the name is with Vasudeva Datta.
Yes.
Where Vasudeva Datta prays that, please you take everyone back, I'll take your karma.
Right.
So Kṛṣṇa takes everybody back. And Lord Chaitanya takes everyone back. Well, you know, but then it fills up again.
It fills up again.
That was great inspiration that our disappointments in the material world can be impetus for us to just surrender to Kṛṣṇa, because he's waiting for us and we won't be disappointed. So I really appreciate you hearing that point.
Yes, you can meditate on Piṅgalā.
Hi, Kṛṣṇa Maharaj. I just wanted to say one thing. I've heard now both bunch of lectures of you, and they are so exquisite and so learned and so beautiful. I can only congratulate the devotees who can hear you. Hi, Kṛṣṇa.
Any more questions? All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Jai.